Hey everybody, welcome to episode 12 of the Foundation First Fitness Show with Bob Owen. Today we are going to talk about muscle soreness. So muscle soreness is kind of that street term that we use to talk about that feeling that we get when we can barely move the next day and a couple of days later after we've done training. Now, this is not something you got to be going for, so I think I'm going to start with that. We don't want to have that effect, and here's why. Training, like I've always mentioned, is a compounding effect. You want to basically build slowly and not go all out all at once and then not be able to move for a couple of days. We want to get that feeling. We want to get that kind of slight soreness that we're going to feel, but nothing that's actually limiting in movement. So what we want to do is we want to try to avoid that as much as we can. Now, before I talk about what happens and all that and how to remedy it and how to prevent it, what we want to do is we want to talk about what is actually happening and why that's happening. So delayed onset muscle soreness is a scientific term used to describe that muscle soreness. And delayed onset muscle soreness basically means that you feel the pain, but you don't feel it until a couple of days later. So whereas when we would normally like cut ourselves or bang our elbow, we'd feel it right away. Delayed means it's going to happen 24 hours later. So generally we feel that our muscles worked for about 4 or 5 hours, but after that we feel kind of okay. It's only until we get to that 24-hour period, that 24 to 72-hour period where everything really peaks, and then we're basically trying to figure out how to get rid of it, and then wait until it kind of dies off by that 5th day. So delayed onset muscle soreness is, or I'm gonna say DOMS from here on out so we can kind of fly through this, but DOMS is essentially determined by the amount of effort we're doing. So what happens is when we go into the gym for the first time and we think we're good, and the reason why I say first time is because generally what happens is the people that go into the gym the first time are the ones that are suffering the most. So when you get into that gym the first time, we don't really think about how much work we really need to do. And then we just start going at it as hard as we can because we think, oh, I'm just going to go until I can't do it anymore. And when I can't do it, I'll be done. But it honestly doesn't take much to elicit that response in the body, especially when we're not used to it. So the main factor that's going to cause it is that surplus over our tolerance. So once we overshoot our muscles' actual tolerance for that load and for that resistance, and our body's ability to kind of prevent that breakdown in that muscle fiber, we're going to actually create that. We're going to create that response and that delayed response and that muscle soreness that's going to come 2-3 days after. So there's no real scientific explanation as to why it's delayed, or why it happens the first time but not the second time we do it, or why it's significantly easier the second time. Now, a lot of it is hypothesized that because we're used to it, we don't feel it as much, but we all know that if you cut yourself one, you cut yourself again, it's still going to hurt the second time. Your body doesn't get used to it. Whereas when you would do, let's say, an arm day, you'd feel it, but not the next day. And that kind of is interesting because we know that it happens, but we don't know why it happens. We know it has something to do with that kind of muscle tear and the breaking apart of the tissue, but we don't know why it's happening at a delayed time. So what is actually the biggest reason we want to not go into that area, and why is it such an issue? Now, this is going to bring me back to a personal experience I had where it was probably not as limiting to many of you who are listening right now, but if you take a journey down memory lane, you will slowly kind of understand where I'm coming with this. Went to the gym for the first time. I was 16. My uncle dragged me in there, said, let's get into the gym. Let's try it. You'll like it. And he basically started throwing me through this circuit. And I was doing, the chest, the back, the pull down, all those different exercises. But I specifically remember arms. And I remember going pretty aggressively on arms too, thinking, it's just arms. I'm just going to keep going. And so I was doing curls after barbell curls, after reverse curls, after hammer curls, and I was doing all these different things because I'm like, I got to hit all the different angles, and I got to make, I got to get all the muscles, and I got to get the arm flexion, I got to get the extension in. And then I was thinking, shouldn't be that bad. What ended up happening was we were December 23rd. So many of you can kind of do that 2-day count and know what happens on that second day after. And I get to Christmas morning and I could not for the life of me extend my arms past here. So basically the entire morning I was unwrapping gifts. Basically at this point, and I was kind of just peeling them away, very gingerly moving throughout the entire day. So it was probably the worst Christmas I've ever experienced in terms of how I felt that morning, where I was actually dreading having to peel these boxes apart and get to what I got. Granted, I was 15, but hey, I'm still a kid now. I still love Christmas, so whatever. But that undeniable feeling of absolute agony that you get that first and second day after you've done training is just something that a lot of us can relate to, where you're going to work and you can barely walk down the stairs, or if you work upstairs, you can barely walk up the stairs to get to your desk. And then when you sit down, God forbid you have to get up 5 minutes later because someone needs you for something, you're not moving. So we want to avoid that. And that's kind of what ends up happening, is that we don't really think about how it's limiting us in the gym, which is also a big factor, because we want to gradually add on those layers and gradually build up our tolerance. But there's also that effect that we're going to feel afterwards. So when we get to work, how are we moving? Are we able to move? Are we able to go about our day? How are we feeling the next day? So there's a lot of spillover that's going to happen when we do go to the gym, we train like crazy, and we don't really think about the feeling that we're going to feel in second, third day after. Now, this doesn't just hold true for training in a gym. If you're a runner, this is for you too. If you're running that first day you get back into it, or if you decide, you know what, I've been running a kilometer for the last few weeks, let's just get out there and run 5K. Well, that 5K that you're going to be running is going to feel like you literally ran a marathon, and your body's going to be in agony the next day, and you could develop a lot more problems. So we want to avoid that as much as possible. Now, in terms of remedies, when you've done it, when you've actually jumped into it and now you're stuck and now you're like, okay, I've done it, now what do I do? This is something where there's a couple of things we can do depending on when we've kind of cued into, we've done a little bit too much. The first one is putting on a heat pack. So getting a heat pack on within that first 8 hours is apparently supposed to help. Now, I've looked it up a bit. I've done some research. It's not conclusive, but there is a couple of research papers out there that says it helps. From there, we can do branched chain amino acids. So you can go into a supplement store, you see those BCAAs. Now, you can do that. I wouldn't recommend it. You can go get BCAAs in other foods. So getting a mixture of different proteins are going to get it, and varying up your proteins, you're going to get those branched chain amino acids in, which is supposed to help. Again, not 100% conclusive. The other thing I heard was Epsom salt. So getting an Epsom salt bath is another thing that you can do on a basis of, not a regular basis. Well, you can do it on a regular basis, but hopefully you're not using this as a remedy to constantly going into the gym and beating yourself to death. So you can do this. It's supposed to help. Apparently there's supposed to be some transfer of ions through your skin that's going to allow you to feel much better afterwards, which is also a really good thing. Again, none of these things are actually limiting or actually going to hurt you, but if they can help, they'll help. So why not do them? Now, I wouldn't recommend using this as an excuse to go to the gym and go as hard as you can every single time. But if that occasion does happen, to be able to move and function the next day, try some of those. Now, there's no real way of preventing it. Now, I know that a lot of us speak about stretching. And did you stretch after? Well, you felt sore because you didn't stretch after. That's not actually true. We've done the research on it. It's been done for years. We know that doesn't help. So stretching is not going to reduce. I repeat, that stretching will not reduce that pain you're going to feel the next day. So make sure you don't stretch for the wrong reasons, stretch for the right reasons. And finally, the best way to prevent it, I think the only real way to prevent it, is to audit what you do. It's to really take the ego and separate the ego away from it, and separate that impatience from it. The more impatient you are to try to lift as heavy as you can and go as hard as you can to get your results, the higher the likelihood of running into DOMS, which is not a good thing, can actually set you back if you're doing it too frequently, because you can cause pain. So reducing that likelihood of it happening is going to be your number one thing. Now, in terms of remedying it in terms of waiting it out and when to get back to using that same muscle group, I would highly recommend you wait until you can move completely well without any issues, without any limitations. Making sure that you wait until after that soreness has completely subsided is the only time you should be jumping back into the gym. Anything before that, and you're going to be asking for problems. So, put all that together. If you guys have any questions, you know how to get in touch with me. And until next time, guys, keep building that foundation.